have many conflicting feelings about the Séance of Blake Manor. The vibes are off the charts. The game makes an incredibly strong first impression. It's 1897, somewhere in West Ireland. You are Declan Ward. You receive a letter with a load of cash pleading for you to come find Evelyn Dean, a woman who went missing while staying at Blake Manor. The staff and guests act like nothing has happened, but foul play is suspected.
I hear you are an honorable man, a steadfast investigator, and, perhaps most importantly, godly. I pray for the girl that this is true.
The jittery opening cutscene notwithstanding, the presentation is phenomenal. The music is damn near perfect, and you don't really know what to expect from this place. The creepy atmosphere is only heightened when the first real person you see is this guy. It's hard to put into words the exact feeling it gives, but I would say it's a sort of dark wonder. This whole place is just a massive, shadowy question mark, and that intrigue and promise does a lot to hook you in. I could talk in circles for quite a while, honestly, just telling you how awesome this game looks and sounds, but I think at this point that's already self-evident. So it's got the style, but what about the substance? Well, the writing is good for video games at the very least. The characters all feel distinct, and even though most of the dialogue lacks voice acting, the writing is good enough that you can almost always imagine them saying the words in your head.
Un moment. Monsieur, you would be Declan Ward, correct? Allow me to even the playing field. I am Etienne Toussaint, a debunker of fraudulent mystics. And it's the topic of fraud I wish to speak with you on.
I want to clarify that it's pretty normal for a game to only voice major scenes, and there's a lot of dialogue here, so I totally understand why they didn't. But if they could ever add full VO in an update later on, I think that would do a lot to elevate the experience. Mostly because the dialogue is the game. Wait, isn't this a supernatural detective puzzle game? Well, a lot of people make comparisons to games like Oberdin or Root Trees Are Dead, but there's some semantics going on here. Despite what the store page says, you are not a detective, you're an investigator. That sounds like the same thing, but it's really not. You will never deduce anything. You will just click on things, and when you have clicked on enough things, Declan will tell you, and at that point, you're given a basic test of reading comprehension via a fill-in-the-blank sentence, and voila! Declan now realizes what you probably already knew. For a true detective game to work, there has to be a near complete alignment between what you know and what your character knows, or at the very least, the player never knowing more than the player character. Most of the time, you're 3 steps ahead of Declan, but sometimes he leaps ahead of you to the point that it feels like a bug. The Séance of Blake Manor is not a detective game. It's better to think of it like a 3D point-and-click visual novel with some very easy puzzles, like Baby's first escape room level stuff.
Oh, I can move these horizontally? Oh, well that's cheating. What the fuck? I didn't know this would be so easy. Okay. Well, if I'm just allowed to do whatever the fuck I want, then. What the fuck? That can't be right?
It's not to say it isn't a good time, it usually is. The main loop of the game is to find a key, unlock whatever that opens, use your detective vision and click on all the glowing things, solve a very easy puzzle, and go ask the right people about the right things to get more information so you can find more keys and probably do it all over again. There are just 2 things that prevent this from being as dull as it sounds. One of them is the fact that it's just fun to be nosy and rummage through people's stuff and learn all their secrets. The other pillar holding this game up is also the bravest and most controversial, the timer. Some people have a bias so strong against timers that they will just categorically not play any game that has them, and those people are missing out. But that fear of timers means developers see them as a risk, and so we all miss out. There is a gold mine of game design that largely goes unmined because people are so afraid of timers. But that fear is where their power comes from. They're an incredibly strong motivator. Time doesn't flow constantly in Blake Manor, only when you interact with an item or talk to somebody, and usually only in 1-minute increments. The Séance will happen in 2 days, so even though you're allowed to, you can't really afford to ask everyone about everything. This is a blessing disguised as a curse. You can't waste time clicking on things that obviously don't pertain to the investigation. You're forced to actually engage with the story and really think about what to ask and who to ask. The timer prevents you from playing the game in the most boring way possible, and it preserves a lot of the game's narrative momentum. The flow of time also means the various characters move around, albeit only at the top of the hour. The game does just enough to convince you that these cardboard cutouts are real people that are just going about their day.
Ah, there you are now.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir, but do I know you?
No, I never said such. Just plainly, there you are, and you are.
You have me there, sir.
This is why the lack of challenging puzzles or deductions isn't really a big of a deal as you would think. You're not really thinking about that, you're just scheduling and prioritizing your day. The game's greatest trick is, despite the scary looking schedule, it actually rarely matters what time it is, and you're not ever locked out of anything important, so your time is mostly just a budget. As long as you're spending it wisely, it usually doesn't matter what you're spending it on and when. When the game is at its best, that inexorable march of time just carries you through it, while also breathing some life into the place, and all the while it manages to never feel like you're reading as much as you really are. That's as high praise as it comes. But what about when it's not at its best? On the final day, the game starts to fray. Not just in a technical sense, that will probably get fixed, but also in nearly every other sense. The basement is massive, but it feels like it was made in just half the time as a guest's room. There's an obvious lack of detail when you compare it to the rest of the manor, and it just straight up feels unfinished, which is a shame because I'm sure it would have been cool if it were just given more time. Another casualty of the later game is the atmosphere. The game lays it on thick to start with, and the assumption is that it's only going to get more intense, but in reality, with only one exception, the game pretty much mellows out as you play it, right up until the end. Everyone is new and scary when you first arrive at the hotel. After all, these people are mystics and murderers. That shadowy question mark resolves into a lesson on the power of friendship. The pacing takes a hit too, since the final day will also be your longest. There's not as much left to click on, so you're mostly just going to be running around the manor trying to finish everybody's quests before the seance. One reason for that weird uplift in tone I mentioned are these very quests. Everyone is coming to the seance for a reason. If you can solve their problem before the seance actually happens, they'll live. Otherwise, they die. That's not even really a spoiler either, because as soon as you get a game over, the game literally tells you how many people survive the seance, and that number is just how many people's quests you completed. These quests are usually what you're actually thinking about at any given time. The whodunit is just the excuse to get Declan to the manor and to provide a climactic finale, but it actually ends up taking a back seat to just airing out these people's dirty laundry. And what's strange is that dirty laundry is reliably more interesting than the case itself. There's a strange machine that has a meter that drops as you convince people to not attend the seance. There's 4 different breakpoints, each measured by a light, so that implies the outcome is gonna be dependent on how many of these lights are on when the seance happens. But that's just smoke and mirrors. The impression is that, yeah, there's probably like 4 different endings or so, depending on how many people you save, but the ending actually just plays out the same regardless. The only difference is who gets a spot on the ending slideshow, and the ones that die aren't even in the slideshow. If we think back to those first moments, it's honestly shocking how different the game you expect is to the one you get. After the intro, the horror elements are extremely minor. You occasionally might see a ghost or some furniture might move. That stuff is cool when it happens, but it doesn't really happen that often. The characters aren't actually creepy or intimidating. In fact, they kind of end up becoming your friends more often than not. I wouldn't call those first couple hours misrepresentative, because from a gameplay perspective, that is exactly what you'll be doing for the following 18 or so hours. But your mind assumes the gameplay and storytelling will evolve, but they really don't. Those early moments are the weirdest and most exciting. Your mind will probably race with the possibilities and you'll pore over every piece of information because it might be relevant to the case, but eventually you realize the game doesn't really have an interest in making you solve anything. It's really just here to tell you a story, 1 minute at a time. It's a fun story, and these are great characters, but unfortunately, Blake Manor just kind of ends up feeling much more mundane and cozy than it seems like it would be. You play the demo thinking this game is going to be dark and eclectic, but it just ends up being a little spooky and strangely uplifting.
I really thank you, Mr. Ward, from the bottom of my heart.
It's not bad, but the power of friendship isn't really what I thought I was signing up for. That might turn some people off, and that's understandable if you thought you were getting a puzzly horror detective game when it's none of those things. But if you have the right expectations going in and are willing to engage with the game's time mechanic, I think there's a fun story to be told here.
Oh, my head. I don't feel rested at all. What was that dream? So vivid. Despite my tiredness, I've woken with a new eagerness to attend this evening's séance.